Hey! There was movement around Australia, so gathered from far and near to listen to old mate Leon on the radio, loud and clear. He spoke about a foreign invasion that's gone to the top job in the land. They're after our farms, our fish and our trees. So he called the resistance to stand. He spoke about God and what it means to be true blue. They could hardly believe his story. Are you fair dinkum and true? So put the billy on, Australia, and gather round that radio and come join the resistance. It's a Fair Dinkum radio show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to FairDinkumRadio.com. Thank you for joining me. My name is Leon Pittard. I am the host of Fair Dinkum Radio. We are broadcasting from the land down under in Australia. Welcome to listeners from all around the world, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. I hope that our time together will be of a benefit and a blessing to you. If you are a listener for the first time, welcome along. I hope that you will appreciate the content of what we focus on here as we analyse and investigate the narrative that we are given every week from our childhood about how the world works, about the institutions of power that exist amongst us, the institutions of power in media, government, academia, banking, military, and all of the different tentacles of the octopus beast that is in control and developing systems designed to funnel you, myself, we the people, into a global management program. For our new listeners, we are here because we believe in design, an architecturally designed society, an architecturally designed kingdom called the Kingdom of Babylon in the Bible. Each week we examine the reality of what is taking place in front of us and compare that with a biblical blueprint and a biblical underlay of what God has told his people will take place into the future. Our focus is specifically aimed at a time period called the time of the end, or as some writers put it, the latter days. I'm tremendously interested in anything to do with the time of the end and the latter days. So as we question the narrative each week, we investigate difficult questions on culture, race, colour revolutions, the destruction of our national sovereignty, the destruction of the identity of targeted cultures, specifically Western Christian culture in Australia, the United States, Britain, and other European countries. We are an open source media platform where we endeavour to provide analysis from the perspective of we the people. We endeavour to comment on political changes, economic systems that are developing into a technocracy, and the cultural and religious changes taking place worldwide. We examine the role of the churches and the major religions in the huge structural changes that are taking place, with a keen focus on our family in Australia first. And I want to welcome our listeners from all around the world. I know that you are many, in many different places. Thank you for joining us. So what are the big events that are taking place around the world today? Well, there are so many, it is difficult to keep track of. CIA contractor admitting that the CIA created ISIS and Al-Qaeda, all on record. Bayer and Monsanto continue to poison the world. Test results in European food of chemical residue exceeding 1.5%. We could talk about that with the war on health. We could talk about the war on terror and how the US Anglo-American Zionist axis is continuing with its bombing in Yemen via its proxy, Saudi Arabia. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you may be surprised that Saudi Arabia is one of the greatest allies of Israel and the US, and is doing the work of Israel in the Middle East, with the propaganda campaign that continues to roll out against the evils of Iran, with the crosshairs on Iran for war into the future, with Netanyahu declaring there will never ever be peace until everyone in Iran dies. This is the warmongering Zionist regime that is influencing the neocon hawks in Washington and connected intimately with the City of London banking institutions all around the world. The central banks, largely owned by Zionists, everywhere. Dr. Nagar in Africa exposes the World Health Organization and the UN in their vaccine tyranny. Christina England doing some excellent work in this department. I hope to speak to her in the future regarding this expose that she has conducted. And of course, data retention at home is on the agenda and continuing. So there are many different issues that we need to deal with, and it is impossible to keep up with every one. But after today's broadcast, I will be taking some time off. I need a few weeks to refresh away from the media. We have had a very intense last 12 weeks or so, and to envelope this period of time before I take a break, I wanted to spend a little bit of time discussing a few emails that I have received, and I want to thank all of you for sending your emails. I appreciate everyone, and if I have not replied, I ask your forgiveness, because I do endeavour to reply personally to every email that I receive that is of a positive nature. I do not engage in debate via email on a lot of sensitive topics, but I use this broadcast to actually share what I think is the reality according to the worldview that I hold on this broadcast each week. So a couple of emails here that have raised a few questions that I'd like to share with you that I think is important we discuss. One here: hi Leon, I'm very passionate, as you are, regarding health and the well-being of all people, especially our precious babies. I listened to a podcast this morning which really had an impact. I think we in Australia could do what this woman, Mary Toko, is getting underway in the US in regards to really informing the general public who have followed the vaccine propaganda. She is awesome and has hired a PR firm to get the truth out there in a really novel way. I implore you to listen and let me know what you think, or just do what you do so well. I know you have contacts, and I'm thinking of the Australian Vaccination Network, our mate General Maddox over there at Real News, the Kraz Files, Conspiracy Oz, and she goes on to, and there are many others I might add that she hasn't mentioned here. There are many other Australian people that are doing a great job in developing media as they can within their sphere of ability, according to their workloads and everything else. And I encourage all of our fellow Australians who are being the media to actually continue in that work, because it is a very important work. And even though we do not collectively all join together and form one platform, it is important that individually we are all working as we can. The emailer goes on to say, I am not young, I'm a nan, and my grandson is free of toxic vaccines.
I don't have a horse in this race, but I cannot stand the BS our health department is pushing regarding a Western Australian baby, 32 days old, who died from whooping cough. All family members fully vaccinated and up to date now. Not only mum and dad pushing for mandatory whooping cough vaccines, but government fully backing them. Check the DTPA vaccine study with baboons. The vaccinated adults had a mild sniffle and shed onto the newborns, who all came down with the disease. I see a mass epidemic as all grandparents and siblings, etc., rush out to get vaccinated. This is not going to have a good outcome, Leon. Love your work, by the way. I never miss an episode. Now, I thank you very much for this email. And, you know, I know that we do have a very broad range of listeners to this broadcast. I have letters from single mothers. I have letters from people who are unbelievers in God that appreciate the non-politically correct analysis that we provide here and commentary from the aspect of we the people. Now, a few things I'd like to just say to this lovely lady that's emailed me. Basically, I think that the content of her message is she's encouraging us to do something collectively as people, media of the people. And it was always my vision that there would be one platform in Australia which would offer alternative media news, a one platform broadcast, if you like. It doesn't have to be FairDinkum Radio, but Australia Speak, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. And that radio broadcast would include shows like mine, Conspiracy Oz, Hereward Fenton over there at Truth News, Real News. There's a group up there in Brisbane, Australian Roundtable Broadcast, Ethan and Jono, they're doing a great job. I mean, all of these people are researching and sharing within the field that they can. And for example, you know, the Australian Vaccination Network could have a show on that platform. And ladies and gentlemen, that was my vision 4 years ago, to endeavour to bring all this together. There's a lot of political problems that sort of arise out of that. And number one, you've got to realise that not everyone thinks the same and not everyone agrees. For instance, Hereward Fenton over there at Truth News doesn't believe in chemtrails. Now, you know, if you're going to share a platform with someone, one does believe in chemtrails, one doesn't, for instance, you've got to realise that you've got to get over that and just share what you believe to be the truth. Some people might believe in the Jewish conspiracy or Jewish supremacy of the world. Others may not. And this often does bring conflict. It doesn't need to, but often does. And from my perspective, you would understand that there would be many of these broadcasters that do not believe in God, do not believe in the Bible. They do not believe the same moral aspects that I endeavour to share with our listeners from the biblical worldview concept. And you see, if I was on that platform, I would have to recognise that there's others there that are not believers, and vice versa. So these are some of the difficulties. But after 4 years, and you know, I think what this lady listener has said to me is great. But you know, what I appeal to is someone young out there to actually take this ball and do it, to actually run with it, to develop a one platform to integrate everyone else's show, 24 hours a day, radio broadcast, media platform, one-stop shop, Australia, we the people media. I am not in a position to do it. I am very tired. After 4 years, I'm basically burnt out. I'm really struggling to do what I do. I love doing what I do. I think it's very important work, and I'm very encouraged by your emails. But this needs someone with energy. And another thing is, this person needs to be paid. You know, there needs to be an incredible amount of support come in from listeners, which at the moment, you know, I appreciate all the support that people give me, but that support is sparse and spasmodic. And I had an academic on my show, a professional doctor, and he talking off air, he said to me, he said, Leon, you've got to fund this operation somehow. You have to be able to actually have funding to be able to broadcast into the future. And, we are dodging all sorts of legal issues here, which we do every week, because we do not live, which we'll get into in a moment, we do not live in a free country, ladies and gentlemen. And as soon as you begin broadcasting, as soon as you begin putting something out there, what you really do is that you put everything you've got on the line. And people might write and criticise and say, you're not doing this and that, but my question is, where's the link of your work? Where are you doing it? And we live in a time where technology is changing, where we, the people, can be the media that we want to be, that we can be the media that we see is missing in the mainstream. And by and large, that's what I do here. And I endeavour to develop the media around my worldview and the interests that interest me more than anything. And I know that many of our listeners identify with that. Like our next emailer, where he said, Leon, I want to just thank you for your work. I want to say how appreciative I am for the excellent commentary and credible guests you have on your show. I identify with your position and feel a connection with you as your heart shines through your words. I also share your outrage at our loss of freedoms and erosion of our individuality imposed upon us through illegitimate governments. I am also a believer in YaHuWaH and believe that without a knowledge and relationship with the Lord, coupled with a knowledge of biblical prophecy, it is impossible to make sense of what is occurring all over our planet. There are many high quality and very credible hosts on the internet that provide valuable and informative insights, some of which I have the highest regard. But if one does not understand that Lucifer is the god of this world, then one will never understand why the things are why they are. And he talks about a very good documentary I've spoken here about in the past called The Age of Deceit, which documents a little bit of how it's going on. So, thank you very much. Another emailer, very good comment. Thank you for those comments and gratefully appreciated. Now, regarding the guests, you see, I've had problems here with the phone line for the last 4 months. And as you know, I thank you very much for your patience, because I've had incredible difficulties with 1 hour's interview taking anything up to 3 hours with dropouts and ringing back. And this is not fair on my guests either, because their time's allocated. And one thing you understand in media, you need to allocate your time really well, because there's a lot of work to do, and unless you're organised, unless you allocate your time, it just doesn't happen. And most of us, we the people that are doing our own media, do not have producers, we do not have admin staff, we are it. In other words, we work our regular jobs, and then we do this as well as and attempt to have a family life and all these other things that we've got to balance. And that is why I was saying, if there was someone young that started a media platform to bring everyone together, I guess a one-stop full-time radio show with its own app, everything else, that person should be paid by we the people to perform that function alone. That's all he does. He just runs that website, he runs that thing, and we need to get, obviously, corporate or sponsors behind that to actually make that happen. So this is a big job, but it's as I said, it's not something I can deal with. I'm doing everything I can, but I understand the intent of the email and I agree with it. It just needs someone, I guess, to develop that further. Now, we have an email here from a different angle, and a very important angle. Very frustration coming from the listener. I'll just read it. Why does Leon always blame things on the Anglo-Americans? Why doesn't he say the Jews? If he's too scared to say the Jews, why doesn't he just say globalists or Zionists? I'm sick to death of white people being blamed for everything. And here's an Anglo-Australian blaming his own people for all the world's problems. Can someone please explain? Whether it's the admin or Leon himself. I'm sick of this anti-white racism and white people who seem to hate themselves. I like Leon, but don't blame us white people. Well, I have answered the emailer and said, look, you haven't been listening for long, because for the last 4 years I've been documenting the war on white Anglo-Saxon Christian people in America, Britain, Europe and Australia, New Zealand. And that this war has been promoted by, the roots go back to the Frankfurt School. Many of those were atheist Jews. Karl Marx was an atheist Jew. The whole protocols of the Elders of Zion is about destroying the Christian cultures in countries, starting colour wars, starting race wars. And this is a subject I've covered many times. And I'm afraid our email is getting mixed up here when why does Leon blame things on the Anglo-Americans? Now, the reason I say the Anglo-US empire is because the City of London and Washington, D.C. have been overtaken. Now, I'm not speaking about white Americans. I'm not blaming them. I'm not speaking about white Australians or white British. What I'm speaking about is their systems of governance. The people, we the people, are under assault. I'm not blaming we the people for the wars, the Zionist-sponsored wars, as I just spoke about with Yemen, through Saudi Arabia, Washington giving the nod, all of the colour revolutions in Ukraine. These were all started by people, the likes of George Soros, democratic institutions that they've developed, which develop colour revolutions and basically start wars and overthrow governments. Now, I'm not blaming the white people at all. What I'm critical of and what I'm analysing and what I'm declaring is that the Anglo-American empire could rightly now be called the Zionist US Anglo Empire. And we will get to that through our commentary today. And so I am very aware of the war against white people. I'm not blaming white people at all. We are under assault. And race wars, colour revolutions, black-white issues, Jews, Islam issues, these are all used to create destabilisation and create wars and friction among us. Listen, I don't hold anything against any man. I have a friend who is a Muslim. We've studied together. We share together. He is of dark skin. I hold nothing against him. I love him. He loves me. We are here to deal with issues, not with personalities, not with people. As in, if we see that the system of governance is overtaking and creating wars, we're going to be critical of it, whether it's the Jews as Zionists, as Israelis or globalists, or whether it's the influence that Zionists have over the United States political system, hence the US Anglo axis. Now, what we have is that we have very influential people that have taken control of central banks, that have taken control of media and Hollywood. Now, the reason I'm reluctant to say what many say, as in a broad stroke statement, as in the Jews control everything, is because there are many Jewish people that do not fit into that collective. And Jewry itself is a totally fragmented and diverse culture, if you like. And it's hard to even call it a race, but I'll get into some of those issues as we go along. But so now, if you are offended, if there's any listener here that is offended or likely to be offended by asking a question about Muhammad, or asking a question about the Talmud, or asking a question about Aborigines, or asking a question about the crimes white people have committed, if you are likely to be offended of any of these questions, I respectfully ask that you leave now. Because we are here to question the narrative. We are here to openly ask questions in a spirit of love towards our fellow men, not holding any grievance, but recognising that people are under the influence of Satan and Lucifer, or they are under the influence of the Most High God, YaHuWaH the Creator. And of course, we come to this from the perspective, understanding that largely the world is divided into two groups. There are those that are being influenced by the spirit of truth, righteousness, love, kindness, gentleness, peace. And there are those that are being influenced by the spirit of darkness, Lucifer, Satan, death, hatred, disease, domination over their fellow man, the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, using force to compel their fellow man into slavery. This is largely how the world is divided today into these two groups. So we are very mindful of the war against white people as one war in the culture war. There is also a war against heterosexuality. There is a war against children. There is a war against individuality. There is a war against health. There is a war against Islam. There is a war against Judaism. There is a war against Christianity. There is a war against everything, friends. And we are here to analyse what the Bible says about those things and call that all those people that are involved in those satanic evil acts, destroying their fellow man, killing their fellow man, bombing their fellow man, to repent and to turn to the true God for the answers. And that is the perspective that we take here. So I thank you for your emails. I really appreciate it. And I want to just say that before I take a few weeks break, for all those that have helped us, that have contributed to this, to helping put food on our table and encourage me in my work, I want to thank you all, because this is an open source media. Your support means a lot to me, and I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the emails from the heart, whether you're believers or unbelievers. Julie, I appreciate your email. Anyone, single mums. Look, we have a diverse group of people that listen to this broadcast, and I recognise that you know this is coming from the sincerity of my heart. I have no other agenda here to funnel you into any system, into any religion, into any political party, into any church, into any collective at all. I want you to question in your own mind all things, to research and make decisions based on solid research for your life future. And when you do that, you empower your own life, your own individuality to stand on the positions that you have accepted, whether that be surrendering your life under the Creator, YaHuWaH, and walking in his ways, or whether it be to say, no, I am not going to be a believer, but I am going to make decisions based on right thinking, on right answers, on the reality. Stopping your life being shaped into the perspective of the mainstream matrix, which has largely been governed and developed by atheistic people, whether they be Jews, whether they be of any other extraction or culture. The fact is, there are multitudes of people under satanic influence trying to shape your worldview and funnel you into their economic, political, religious matrix. And so, as we move on to our broadcast today, I need to take a breath. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate your time. Are you FairDinkum?
Is a chicken ad lib?
Are you Ridgy Didge? Hey Jess, are you True Blue? One final question. Are you FairDinkum?
Yes, sir.
Can a kookaburra laugh? Well, we live in a time of tremendous change. Today, devils, merchants, and media. It's impossible today for any man or woman to keep up with prophetic events that are taking place. In the natural world around us, there is an incredible amount of natural disasters. Not anthropogenic global warming. I'm talking about just natural disasters that do take place on this earth. Unless you're looking for these things every week, you can't keep track of them. Even in the political sphere, the events that are taking place every week, if you were just to follow one line of politics, like Australian politics, it is impossible to keep up. It's impossible to keep up with the economic changes, the cultural changes, or the religious changes being made by the major religious institutions worldwide. It's impossible to keep up. And when you begin to broadcast or to be media of the people, you realise that you have to focus on specific areas that interest you, because there are so many rabbit holes that you can get distracted with that you won't cover anything unless you're focused on what are the real issues that are interesting you. The Messiah said while he was on earth, he said, "Unto you it is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of God." Now, I've spoken to you about this before, and basically these mysteries are twofold. Number one is a personal knowledge. In other words, there is an experimental scientific process that you can go through, which is really a passion of mine because I know it to be real. And for those who test this reality, this scientific reality, you also can realise that God's power in the life of the individual is real. That's one aspect, the personal knowledge aspect, if you like. But then there is another aspect of the way the world works, an outline of events, kingdoms in history that have come and gone, history of the past and history of the future, which is called prophecy. And this has always intrigued me about how the Bible actually shows us the blueprint, if you like, of what is to take place into the future. And this is a fascinating aspect to me. I love anything to do with the end time, the time of the end. You know, Daniel 12:1, there will be a time of trouble, such as never was. This terminology, specifically sprinkled through Daniel, Revelation and the Gospels, it gives us a picture of what to come. It gives us a picture, it paints a picture of this kingdom of Babylon building and building and building until all men and women and children and grandparents on the earth will be forced. There's the key word, the key understanding is force. Now, this kingdom is being developed by three main structural pillars. These three structural pillars I've often spoken to you about: politics, economy, and religion, which encompasses culture. Now, the drivers of these main structural pillars have given their souls and the systems that they've developed to the kingdom of darkness and the ruler of this present world, this time we live in, what's called, the Bible calls the appointed time. So we are in a time period that has been appointed for this earth and the way we know it today. It's always fascinated me how the book of Revelation describes the science of the way the future works. It talks about three unclean spirits, demonic spirits. It describes them as frogs. It says they come out of the mouth of the dragon, and a little bit of history lesson here, the dragon is Satan. These are spirits that come out of his mouth, out of the mouth of the beast and the false prophet. Now, without going into a lot of detail about what this means and these different entities mean, they are the spirits of devils, working miracles. Now listen to this. This is the key. Which go forth unto the kings of the earth. So we have the spirits of devils working miracles in front of your eyes, right? That go forth. What's their aim? They go out to capture the kings of the earth. Who are the kings of the earth? The kings of the earth are the political systems that exist. But it doesn't end there. The kings of the earth and of the whole world. To you and me. To we the people. So the aim of these spirits of devils is to deceive the politicians, to deceive the people, to gather them together to the battle of the great day of God Almighty, to gather them together for the end game scenario. So this is a scientific process, friends, that the Bible lays out. The spirits of devils go forth, deceive the kings. So there is a union between Lucifer and the kings. And not only just Lucifer, but his agents on earth that amalgamate and form coalitions with the kings. Those who have given their lives to building this kingdom of Babylon are actively in opposition to YaHuWaH the Creator of the universe. And as I've shared in the past, a beginning of our series on the kingdom of Babylon, that this was initiated by Nimrod and his wife Semiramis. And it's a kingdom of conquest, of death, theft and war. Nimrod, the mighty hunter, represents the right-hand force of conquest, war, theft, domination, nicolations. Think the Zionist, US, NATO coalition. What's their aims? Well, Wesley Clark has outlined it. We've covered it here in the past. They're going to bomb every nation into submission. There's Nimrod, the hunter, taking nations by theft, by conquest. And then there's Semiramis, his wife, representing the left hand of culture. Another way to transform nations through culture. The rulership of women. The feminism doctrine. The mother of harlots, the Bible describes Semiramis as, and who she represents. We see that through Semiramis there is a conquest through seduction. You see, friends, the culture change industry is seducing spirits of devils, seducing the kings of the earth to change laws according to the culture change industry and the people that run that industry. The same as the military-industrial complex under Nimrod, seducing politicians like the Australian Prime Minister to be in Iraq, bombing, Afghanistan bombing, killing people everywhere. And then we think of Tammuz, the reincarnated Nimrod, the son of Semiramis, in Mystery Babylon religion, the son of God, the initiate, the high priest of the mystery religion, the high priest of the Babylonian, the Egyptian, the Sumerian, the Persian, the Greek, the Roman, occult mystery religion. Hinduism, Buddhism, humanism, all come from the inner doctrine and knowledge from from Tammuz. And so we have the Trinity of Babylon with Nimrod, Semiramis and Tammuz. And one of the greatest deceptions that has been inflicted upon the people, upon we the people, upon us from our parents inadvertently, many of them in ignorance, was the teaching that government is there for the people and that government actually loves you and that you elect government and they do good things for you. Now, we must concede that there has been times in the past where governments, it could be concluded, were good to their people. However, the focus of our broadcast today is speaking about the end game. The kingdom of Babylon under the end time, the latter times. What's it going to look like? Are the governments going to love the people? Or are the governments going to be there to serve the spirits of devils that have seduced them? Many Christians are also confused on this point. Many Christians believe that they should start political parties and be involved in governments. And if we can just get the right people in there, we're going to have a righteous society. Because after all, we could begin a theocracy like, well, it's what Islam wants. And I guess they envisaged that a theocracy under Christians would be better. Some would advocate that we could still kill the unbelievers, which would be no different to Islam anyway, and no different to Talmudic, Kabbalistic Judaism. Now, every elected government reveals deeper corruption, increasing economic slavery. And this is what I'm talking about, looking about the timeline of history, where we're at. This is what interests me. Where we are on this timeline, this is the thing that fascinates me. We've got a blood moon this Saturday night, ladies and gentlemen. And most parts of the world will be able to see this blood moon on Saturday night, providing it's not raining and there's no clouds like there was on the last one. And it just so happens to fall on the biblical calendar day of Passover instituted by YaHuWaH. This has got nothing to do with the Jews. The Jews don't own it. The biblical calendar was given by the Creator. If the Jews have trashed it, if the Jews have rejected him, it's got nothing to do with them anyway. It's got to do with you. It's got to do with your relationship to your Creator, what you do with that. So this Saturday night, there'll be a blood moon. It'll be the 14th day of the first month. It will be a full moon. On Saturday night, there will be a blood moon. The Bible said the moon would be turned to blood. The sun would be as sackcloth of hair, black as the sackcloth of hair. You know, there was an eclipse of the sun 2 weeks ago in the Northern Hemisphere. And he said, nation will rise against nation. He said, all these things are going to happen. He said, keep watching. That's what we're doing, friends. We're here watching. I'm not here to say to you, hey, the Messiah's coming next year. No. I'm not going to fall into that trap. Even if I did, through my own research and calculations, think there was a time, a date that I could point to, which many have, I'd be very reluctant to actually say to people, this is it, because in the past so many people have been proved wrong. But I know that the Messiah said, I'm telling you all these things so you watch, right? That's the point. We should be watchful. We should be wary. We should be keeping our lamps full of oil, full of the Holy Spirit. We should be watching our garments. We should be examining ourselves. Whose kingdom do we belong to? That's the big question. And so with every elected government, there's increasing surveillance, increasing slavery, increasing unrest, increasing terror, increasing crime, increasing interference with government in every aspect of our lives. And yet Operation Chaos is still taking place everywhere. And I listen to mainstream broadcasters, they haven't got any answers. All they say is, why are all these things going on? Why can't we have one good government? Why can't we have one good time period without all these issues taking place? Have you ever noticed the whole world is trying to mop up? Basically, nothing's working. Everything's behind in infrastructure, everything's behind in economy, everything's behind in every single aspect of life. Why? Why are we living under Operation Chaos? Well, that's the great thing about the Bible. It gives us the answer. You see, the world has been given to Lucifer until the appointed time allotted to him. I should do a broadcast just on this point because I've mentioned it so many times. And see, when the Messiah was on earth, history records that the devil took him up to a high mountain and he showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. Remember what we begun with? Spirits of devils performing miracles. He was a miracle. The devil performs miracles, friends, and his angels perform miracles. His demonic spirits perform miracles. And all you've got to do is watch an AC/DC concert, a rock and roll concert, and look at how the people move. They're under demonic possession. Why do people cry at the right time in the movies? Because they are seducing spirits that have gone forth to the kings to make legal decisions and to all the people to follow suit. And the devil said to him, all this power will I give thee. What power? The power that he showed him in the miracles, of showing him all the worlds in a moment of time. The power of Hollywood, 3D, 4D, 5D, untapped miracles we don't even know about are there, see? He said, I will give all this power to you and the glory of them, for that is delivered unto me, and to whomsoever I will give it. You see what he said? He said, this power is given to me. This time period, I am the prince of this world. This kingdom is mine. And all those people who choose to walk in God's kingdom, he gives them a greater measure of grace to protect them against the assaults of the enemy. With the assaults of sin in their personal lives doesn't mean that physical things don't take place around us and we get trapped in earthquakes, we have car accidents, things go wrong, because the Bible says time and chance happeneth to them all. He said he causes the sun to shine on the righteous and the unrighteous. You see, God doesn't withhold his good gifts from those who choose not to walk in his ways. But there is a gradual removal of grace from humanity as the timeline of history progresses. And if an individual chooses not to walk in his way, the grace of God will gradually be removed from that individual. And he will reap what he has sown, whatever that is. And that is the natural laws that YaHuWaH has put in place. And he gave this kingdom to Lucifer because the father and mother of this kingdom, Adam and Eve, chose to walk in his ways and chose to accept his words over the words of Yeshua. And when they received his words, they received his seducing spirit. They received his mind. Because the spirit, the words convey spirit. And that is why Lucifer said, all this is given to me, it's delivered to me, and whoever I will give it. We could go through a huge list of Hollywood actors, rock and roll stars, political figures that have said they gave their life to the devil, and that's why they had success. That's why the Bible tells us anyone that is walking in his kingdom is a stranger and a pilgrim on this earth. See, friends, for those who are walking in God's kingdom, we should recognise nothing that's happening out there should be of a surprise. We know exactly what is taking place and how it is happening. You see, Edward Bernays, the father of modern propaganda, said and talked to us about the science of the way the kingdom of Babylon works and the interaction of media and economics. He said the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organised habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. I would go as far as to say is right there is the seducing spirit of Lucifer. Manipulation, you see. This is not free will. This is not free choice society. This is about manipulating your worldview. This is about controlling your worldview. He said that's what democracy really is. It's about a society that's controlled. But see, we've been sold that democracy is we go and vote once every 3 years and the government, then we own it. We owe the debt. We owe everything they say. If they say homosexuality is good, that means you, the people, have to accept it. If they say killing 1 million babies a year is good, that means you, the people, have to accept it because you voted them in. That's the deceit of what has been given to us. He goes on to say those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. We are governed. So, you see, the true ruling power of our country is an invisible government. Who is it, ladies and gentlemen? Let me ask you a question. Who is it that manipulate your thoughts and your opinions today? It is the media. We are governed, our minds are moulded, our tastes are formed, our ideas suggested largely by men we have never heard of. This is the logical result of the way in which our democratic society is organised. And I go back to my earlier opening comments for new listeners. You see, we believe in an organised society. What we have today just didn't happen. Every war we've had hasn't just happened. It's been planned. It's been manipulated. The history of mankind, for thousands of years, is a history revealing the conquest of the human will over other human will. The conquest of nations, the conquest of war. All wars are bankers' wars. Type that in to the search on FairDinkum Radio and you'll find an excellent podcast. And so, the communication systems of media, television, radio, Hollywood, and to a lesser extent, newsprint, is what develops our worldview. The Bible paints a picture of the end game as being a period of tyranny, ownership and control of all resources, and the enslavement of humanity, physically and for some spiritually. It is the merchants of the earth that have stolen the resources, the land, the liberty from the inhabitants of the people. And it is the merchants of the earth that go forth as seducing spirits to the kings of the earth to administer their will against the people. The ownership is all-encompassing. Listen to this list. Gold, silver, precious stones, pearls, linen, silk, wood, all manner of ivory, vessels, precious wood, brass, iron, marble, cinnamon, odours, ointments, frankincense, wine, oil, fine flour, wheat, beasts, sheep, horses and chariots. Hit pause. And the most important, and slaves and souls of men. The merchants of these things were made rich by Semiramis, by her the mother of harlots, riding the beast. Slaves and the souls of men. Where are you, ladies and gentlemen? You see, I concede that physically I'm a slave in this world, that I can't escape it. It's here. We are being funneled into a greater level of slavery every single week. But there is something they can never take from you, friends, and that is your soul. If you are hid in YaHuWaH, if you are covered by His grace, if you are surrounded by His wall of protection, which is His law, His commandments, if you are walking in His ways, they can never take your soul. So who are these merchants of the earth? Well, why don't we look at who the Messiah rebuked while He was on earth when He went into the temple and He cast out all those that sold. And He said, my house is a house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. Who was He speaking to? He was speaking to the Jews of His day. And He taught daily in the temple. But listen, the chief priests, scribes, rabbis, chiefs of the people, what did they do? They sought to destroy Him. To the rabbis of His day, He called them the sons of Lucifer. John 8:44, He said, you are of your father, the devil. Pretty harsh words, aren't they? I believe it to be true. This is a fact. He knew who His enemies were. His enemies were the people that He came to save. They hated Him. The lusts of your father you will do, He said. He was a murderer from the beginning. He's speaking about Lucifer. You see, the spirits of devils go out to seduce the kings of the earth. Think about it in history. The Jews went and seduced Pilate into killing the Messiah, who was their enemy. Today we have the Jews seducing the Anglo-American Empire
into killing their enemies. Think about it. Think about Libya, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Yemen, today, Afghanistan. The same techniques, friends, are still being used. The Anglo-American governments, Australia included, Canada, New Zealand, the European Union, have been hijacked largely by Zionist central bankers and the merchants of the earth. This is not a hidden conspiracy, but it's an open agenda for worldwide hegemony. This picture is that of the spirits of devils, religion, culture, finance, politics, that inspire and possess wicked humanity, bankers, oligarchs, money changers, to deceive the kings of the earth, the politicians of each nation, by means of modern scientism called miracles. Think about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the World Bank, the IMF, free trade agreements, economic reform, economic rationalism, to sign over and administrate a legal enslavement against we the people. This is the picture the Bible gives us. Isn't it beautiful, friends? Isn't it wonderful that we've been given this understanding of how the enemy is working right in front of our eyes to destroy our people? And we have the answer. So let's go to a clip here and let's examine how much power Zionism has over political and economic affairs worldwide.
For many years, Israel has violated well-established standards of international law and has defied numerous United Nations resolutions in its occupation of conquered lands, in extrajudicial killings, and in repeated acts of military aggression. Most of the world regards Israel's policies, and especially its oppression of Palestinians, as illegal and outrageous. This international consensus is reflected, for example, in numerous UN resolutions condemning Israel, which have been approved with overwhelming majorities. United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan said in 2002, "The whole world is demanding that Israel withdraw from occupied Palestinian territories. I don't think the whole world can be wrong." Only in the United States do politicians and the media still fervently support Israel and defend its policies. For many years, the U.S. has provided Israel with crucial military, diplomatic, and financial backing, including more than $3 billion each year in aid. Why is the U.S. such a staunch bastion of support for Israel? Bishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa, who was awarded the 1984 Nobel Peace Prize, has candidly identified the reason. Speaking to an audience in Boston, he said, "But you know as well as I do that somehow the Israeli government is placed on a pedestal in the U.S., and to criticize it is to be immediately dubbed anti-Semitic. People are scared in this country to say wrong is wrong because the Jewish lobby is powerful, very powerful." Bishop Tutu spoke the truth. Although Jews make up only 2 or 3% of the U.S. population, they wield immense power and influence, much more than any other ethnic or religious group. Jewish author and political science professor Benjamin Ginsberg acknowledged this reality in his 1993 book, The Fatal Embrace. He wrote, "Since the 1960s, Jews have come to wield considerable influence in American economic, cultural, intellectual, and political life. Jews played a central role in American finance during the 1980s, and they were among the chief beneficiaries of that decade's corporate mergers and reorganizations."
And just remember, the chief beneficiaries of corporate and economic mergers into the future, because I will touch on that
after this clip. This is very important. These are facts, ladies and gentlemen. This is not in any way anyone's illogical opinion, because this is admitted by Zionists themselves, as this clip will reveal.
Today, though barely 2% of the nation's population is Jewish, close to half its billionaires are Jews. The chief executive officers of the 3 major television networks and the 4 largest film studios are Jews, as are the owners of the nation's largest newspaper chain and the most influential single newspaper, the New York Times. The role and influence of Jews in American politics is equally marked. Jews are only 3% of the nation's population and comprise 11% of what this study defines as the nation's elite. However, Jews constitute more than 25% of the elite journalists and publishers, more than 17% of the leaders of important voluntary and public interest organizations, and more than 15% of the top-ranking civil servants. Stephen Steinlight, former Director of National Affairs of the American Jewish Committee, has likewise noted what he calls the disproportionate political power of Jews, which, he says, is pound for pound the greatest of any ethnic cultural group in America.
So there it is, the greatest influence over the US Anglo-American Empire is the political influence of Jews in Washington, and by those statistics, the numbers of media, Hollywood, economic, political, cultural institutions that they either control, or the greater percentage of those institutions are controlled by Zionists, with Zionist intent in influencing the United States Anglo-American Empire to carry out their worldview, their future worldview.
He goes on to say that Jewish economic influence and power are disproportionately concentrated in Hollywood, television, and in the news industry.
Now just think about what we spoke about before. Hollywood, television, and the news industry. Media, seducing spirits, shaping worldview. Edward Bernays, our thoughts, our habits are organised by people we have never heard of. And it is by people who control media.
2 well-known Jewish writers, Seymour Lipset and Earl Robb, made a similar point in their 1995 book, Jews and the New American Scene. They wrote, "During the last 3 decades, Jews in the United States have made up 50% of the top 200 intellectuals, 20% of professors at the leading universities, 40% of partners in the leading law firms in New York and Washington, 59% of the directors, writers, and producers of the 50 top-grossing motion pictures from 1965 to 1982, and 58% of directors, writers, and producers in 2 or more primetime television series." Vanity Fair magazine in October 2007 published a list of what it calls the world's most powerful people, a lineup of the 100 most influential media bosses, bankers, publishers, image makers, and so forth, who determine how we view ourselves and the world, and who, directly and indirectly, shape our lives and our futures. Jews made up more than half of the powerful men and women on the Vanity Fair list, reported a leading Israeli newspaper, the Jerusalem Post.
Now, this is a very interesting point, and I did hear a broadcast a little while ago where a Bible teacher gave a list of all of the influential, successful Jews in Hollywood and politics and media, and it was basically putting forward the point that these people were successful because of God's blessing. Now, I completely dispute that point because Lucifer said he can give fame, fortune, success to anyone he chooses on this earth. And so I dispute the Christian, in inverted commas, Zionist Christian support for anything Israeli, anything Jewish, anything Zionist, as though these people still have the blessings of the Almighty God upon them, even though they've rejected his Messiah and basically turned their back on his message, and, basically they're an Antichrist system. And yet here, this preacher was trying to share that this is why all of these blessings have. Now, of course, my position is the complete opposite of that. When people turn their backs on the Messiah and the true God and develop their own religion with Talmudic and Kabbalistic background, in other words, this is just the ramblings of the rabbis and their esoteric mystery religion knowledge that they have developed. This has nothing to do with the true God. And Yeshua said that just prior to them going to Pilate and seducing Pilate into hanging him up and killing him, he said to them, your house is left unto you desolate, friends. Now, when there's no Spirit of God in the house, I can tell you what fills it, the spirit of devils. And that is the place that Judaism has as an Antichrist system that killed the Messiah and are totally opposed to Christianity. They're totally opposed to Christians, and yet the right-wing Christians and churches are some of their greatest supporters, which we'll get to in a moment.
The influence of American Jewry in Washington, the Jerusalem Post has also noted, is far disproportionate to the size of the community Jewish leaders and U.S. officials acknowledge. But so is the amount of money they contribute to election campaigns. One member of the influential Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, the paper went on to note, estimated Jews alone had contributed 50% of the funds for President Bill Clinton's 1996 re-election campaign.
Let's just hit pause there for a moment. We're talking about seducing spirits, right? Money is being used openly to seduce congressmen, politicians, presidents, to actually buy them. Money is used to seduce these people over to the Zionist doctrine, to support for Israel. Take away that support, friends. Take away that seducing spirits, we'd be in a different world. But nevertheless, this is the way the Bible says it would happen. And here, in reality, we see it is happening. All of that money flowing in to buy the kings of the earth is biblical prophecy fulfilled right before our eyes.
Mother Jones magazine compiled a listing of the 400 leading contributors to the U.S. national elections in the year 2000. Of the first 10 leading contributors, 7 were Jewish, as were 12 of the top 20 and 125 of the top 250. The single biggest donor to American politicians is Israeli billionaire and media mogul Haim Saban. In January 2007, it was revealed that he had donated approximately $13 million to various U.S. political candidates. Saban's ardent devotion to the Jewish state has been noted by the New York Times, which wrote, "He has since emerged as perhaps the most politically connected mogul in Hollywood, throwing his weight and money around Washington and increasingly the world, trying to influence all things Israeli. I'm a one-issue guy, and my issue is Israel," he said. Jews are also greatly overrepresented in the U.S. Supreme Court. 3 of the 9 justices of America's highest judicial authority are Jews. The Jewish role in Hollywood has long been a formidable one. This fact has been frankly acknowledged by Michael Medved, a prominent and influential Jewish author and film critic. In an article published in 1996 entitled, "Is Hollywood Too Jewish?" he wrote, "It makes no sense at all to try to deny the reality of Jewish power and prominence in popular culture. Any list of the most influential production executives at each of the major movie studios will produce a heavy majority of recognizably Jewish names." One person who has carefully studied this subject is Jonathan J. Goldberg, editor of the influential Jewish community weekly Forward. In his 1996 book, Jewish Power, he wrote, "In a few key sectors of the media, notably among Hollywood studio executives, Jews are so numerically dominant that calling these businesses Jewish-controlled is little more than a statistical observation."
A statistical observation. I want you to think for a moment about what comes out of Hollywood. I want you to think for a moment about what is being presented to the people as their worldview. There's a very good documentary called Hollywoodism. Look it up on YouTube, you'll find it. And it is a documentary that basically shows how Hollywood has shaped the worldview, speaking of in the American context, of the American people to think this is what it means to be American. And this is what the role of Hollywood has been. We know the CIA's been working right in there, developing all of these different propaganda thinking, right? Now, this goes back to world history. It goes back to the First World War, it goes back to the Second World War, and ladies and gentlemen, it ties right into what's happening with Russia today and the Ukraine. The exact same thing. And, you know, I haven't got time to go into it here, but what took place in Germany and how anything national today, anyone that speaks about nationalism, as Adolf Hitler was concerned about, the national identity of Germany, the bankruptcy of Germany, the economic destruction of Germany, anyone that speaks on the national label, if you like, is confronted with being, is basically accused of being Nazis. And this is the way that Hollywood has developed the mindset of the world to hate nationalism, to hate white race, right? And all of these stories and this history has been coloured. And there are some excellent books you need to read about world history, which has changed and will change your worldview by doing research apart from just getting it from Hollywood, which is completely constructed to funnel you into a certain mindset, specifically regarding the victimisation of Jews worldwide and how these people are high-minded and really need to be protected from any questioning. Now, I believe everyone should be protected from every form of violence, absolutely. But no one should be exempt from questioning. No one should be exempt from critical questions being asked about institutions of power and how that power is being used to manipulate and control the opinions and thoughts of the masses, i.e. Hollywood and media and the kings of the earth that have been seduced to make legal arrangements to basically enslave the people under the agenda of the New World Order.
Hollywood at the end of the 20th century is still an industry with a pronounced ethnic tinge. Virtually all the senior executives at the major studios are Jews. Writers, producers, and to a lesser degree directors are disproportionately Jewish. One recent study showed the figure as high as 59% among top-grossing films. The combined weight of so many Jews in one of America's most lucrative and important industries gives the Jews of Hollywood a great deal of political power. They are a major source of money for Democratic candidates. Joel Stein, a regular contributor to Time magazine and a television commentator, dealt with this issue in a column for the Los Angeles Times entitled, "How Jewish is Hollywood?" In this December 2008 piece, he wrote, As a proud Jew, I want America to know about our accomplishment. Yes, we control Hollywood. I don't care if Americans think we're running the news media, Hollywood, Wall Street, or the government. I just care that we get to keep running them.
There you go. There you go, from the mouth of Joel Stein. Yes, we control Hollywood. Yes, we control politics. Yes, we control media. My main concern, he said, is that we keep controlling them. Now, this is not Leon's opinion. This is what Andrew Bolt and the neocons in US media, politics, will never deal with, because they do not want to face the facts that they have been seduced, that their influence has been bought by this concept of Jewish victimisation, and that we have institutions set up everywhere to create a chilling effect on anyone asking questions regarding what this influence does, what this influence achieves. Ever heard of weapons of mass destruction? We're still there bombing. There was no weapons of mass destruction. Now we're being told that Iran is the greatest nuclear threat, while Israel has had a secret nuclear program going on for generations. But we won't talk about that, will we? Because after all, that could jeopardise national security. But we will talk about Yemen, we will talk about Iran, and we'll talk about anyone else that gets in our way. And we'll develop a story. We won't talk about planes going down from other means. We'll talk about the psychiatric mindset of the individual and how pilots now have to be psychologically screened everywhere, and how we'll be watching them more critically, and another surveillance grid will be built. That's what we'll talk about, right?
Reflecting their important role in the American media, Jews are routinely portrayed as high-minded, compassionate, and deserving of sympathy and support. While millions of Americans readily accept such imagery, not everyone is impressed. During an interview in 1996, actor Marlon Brando said, "I am very angry with some of the Jews. They know perfectly well what their responsibilities are. Hollywood is run by Jews. It's owned by Jews. And they should have a greater sensitivity about the issue of people who are suffering." Jewish Zionist power is not a new phenomenon, but has long been an important factor in American life. In 1972, President Richard Nixon and the Reverend Billy Graham, the nation's best-known Christian evangelist, met for a private meeting in the White House. In a recorded conversation that was made public many years later, the two men spoke frankly about the Jewish grip on the American media. Graham said, "This stranglehold has got to be broken, or the country's going down the drain." The president responded, "You believe that?" "Yes, sir," said Graham. "Oh boy," replied Nixon, "so do I. I can't ever say that, but I believe it." As powerful as he was, the President of the United States was fearful of a power even greater than his own. In a detailed 1978 study entitled The Zionist Connection, Jewish American scholar Alfred M. Lilienthal raised the question, how has the Zionist will been imposed on the American people? In answering this question, he wrote, "It is the Jewish connection, the tribal solidarity among themselves, and the amazing pull on non-Jews that has molded this unprecedented power. The Jewish connection covers all areas and reaches every level. Most Americans may not even sense this gigantic effort, but there is scarcely a Jew who is not touched by its tentacles." The extent and depth to which organized Jewry reached and reaches in the U.S. is indeed awesome. The most effective component of the Jewish connection is probably that of media control. Jews, toughened by centuries of persecution, have risen to places of prime importance in the business and financial world. Jewish wealth and acumen wields unprecedented power in the area of finance and investment banking, playing an important role in influencing U.S. policy toward the Middle East. In the larger metropolitan areas, the Jewish-Zionist connection thoroughly pervades affluent financial, commercial, social, entertainment, and art circles. Jews in Israel feel free to act brutally against Arabs, writes Israeli journalist Ari Shavit, believing, as he put it, with absolute certitude that now, with the White House, the Senate, and much of the American media in our hands, the lives of others do not count as much as our own. In Britain, a veteran member of the House of Commons candidly declared in May 2003 that pro-Israel Jews had taken control of America's foreign policy and has succeeded in pushing the U.S. and Britain into war in Iraq. Tam Dalyell, a Labour Party deputy known as Father of the House because he is the longest-serving member of Parliament, said, "A Jewish cabal have taken over the government in the United States and formed an unholy alliance with fundamentalist Christians. There is far too much Jewish influence in the United States." Admiral Thomas Moorer, former chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, has spoken with blunt exasperation about the Jewish-Israeli hold on the United States. He said, "I've never seen a president, I don't care who he is, stand up to them, that is, the Israelis. It just boggles the mind. They always get what they want. The Israelis know what is going on all the time. I got to the point where I wasn't writing anything down. If the American people understood what a grip these people have got on our government, they would rise up in arms. Our citizens certainly don't have any idea what goes on." Today the danger has never been greater. Israel and Jewish organizations are prodding the United States into new wars against Israel's enemies. To sum up, Jews wield immense power and influence in the United States. The Jewish lobby is a decisive factor in U.S. support for Israel. Jewish Zionist interests are not identical to American interests. In fact, they often conflict. As long as the might of what Bishop Tutu calls the very powerful Jewish lobby remains entrenched, there will be no end to the Jewish Zionist domination of American political life and the mass media, Zionist oppression of Palestinians, the Israeli threat to peace, and the bloody conflict between Jews and non-Jews in the Middle East.
And now that clip, it could be said, with all fairness, is a very good illustration of the truth, of the influence of Jews in media, banking, politics. And returning to our scriptural overlay and our scriptural blueprint of how these things would take place, we see a combination of seducing spirits of media, banking, and industry, seducing and influencing politics to the direct benefit of the financiers, the merchants of the earth, and the indirect injury of all other groups, meaning we the people. Listen to this. Professor Carol Quigley. These are facts, friends. These are facts. In his book, Tragedy and Hope, A History of the World in Our Time, he said the powers of financial capitalism. Who's that? We've just heard who it is. The powers of financial capitalism. Do you know that nearly every nation in the world that is subject to central banking, there is only a couple that are left. They're not under the central banking system. Keep that in mind when we're speaking about worldwide control. The power of financial capitalism had another far-reaching aim, nothing less. This is the aim, friends. This is the agenda. Andrew Bolt, This is what mainstream media will not tell you. This is why we are here, to emphasise what is not being told. The powers of financial capitalism had an agenda, a conspiracy, my words, nothing less than to create a world system of financial control in private hands, to dominate the political system, the kings of the earth of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. This is what the Bible said would happen. The Bible said it would be seducing spirits out of the mouth of the beast, out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the false prophet. The combination of politics, economics, religion, culture would seduce the kings of the earth into submission to their economic, cultural, political system. To control the earth. Private hands, like the Federal Reserve. It's a totally private organisation. Think Rockefeller, think Morgan, think Rothschild, think Warburg. The conspirators of financial capitalism. This system was to be controlled in a feudalistic fashion by central banks, all acting in agreement, secret agreements arrived at in private meetings. The apex of the system was the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, a private bank owned and controlled by the world's central banks, which were all in private hands. There it is. That is the reality of what the Bible said would happen. And so, ladies and gentlemen, all media must be viewed with an agenda. All media must be viewed as an industry. Every story that's presented and focused upon, think about this. Think about this. If this is what you take away from this broadcast, the next time you sit down to watch the nightly news, look at every story as an industry that's coming after you, that's coming after your money via government taxation to support a new industry, i.e. psychological evaluation on pilots, i.e. developing surveillance state, i.e. genetically modified food, i.e. mandatory vaccines. If we talk about the war on terror, if we talk about the war on health, if we talk about the war on culture, the war on individuality, the individual is being targeted through media, and he is being framed as being dangerous outside the collective. He is a threat to the herd, and he must be eliminated. Society must be vaccinated against individuality, especially those rural radicals who actually believe in national sovereignty, or radicals that actually believe in the book of Revelation, because the book of Revelation talks about governments enslaving their people via the merchants of the earth, because the governments have been in adultery with them. They've sold out, friends. They've committed treason. The government does not love you. The Bible says that the kings of the earth are in adultery with the merchants of the earth and the great whore of Babylon, the religious institutions, the cultural institutions, the economic institutions, the academic, media, educational systems, have all sold out and are in adultery against you. You don't matter. You just do your job within your feedlot, and that's it for you. So next time, friends, you settle down to watch the news, you'll notice that every story is an industry. It's either one that is building or one they're about to destroy. In a previous broadcast entitled Gospel Basics, we outlined that the Creator of the universe has the answer to the problem of corruption, evil, sin and death. The science of the gospel understanding this answer and incorporating into your life is the answer for the future, friends. The choice is yours. Until next time, goodbye. Thanks for joining me.